I told Jason how to do it.
Everybody enjoy their lunch? Are the people, Norman, who most need to hear this, are they here? Are the people who most need to hear this here?
I think they all need to hear it equally. So yeah,
Everybody's here equally?
they'll watch
All
the
right,
video.
so we'll relay the information. Um, the person in charge of NNPA National Digital Advertising is Dr. Norman Rich. He's going to lead this workshop, and this will be our last workshop of the day before we all get ready for the gala tonight. Amen. All right. So, we good, brother? Okay. All right. And again, let me just reemphasize for those of you who have any issues with the slides, they're also on your phone because we're streaming. If you go to one of the streams on YouTube or blackpressusa.com with Black Press USA Twitter, you can actually see up close some of the slides. Okay. Everybody, a round of applause for Dr. Norman Rich.
Okay, hello. Am I on here? Am I good? All right, great. So hello, everybody. Most of you I know, either because you've harassed me on the phone or we know each other personally. Even though you haven't seen a lot of me, I've seen all the sessions. I've been sitting in my hotel room looking at the computer screen, making sure that these streams go the way they're supposed to go. And I gave a lot of thought to this. We're probably not going to get through my whole deck, but you'll still be able to get a copy of it. But I want to share an email that I don't have. I was trying to pull it up, I couldn't find it, but I can summarize an email that I got from Claudette Perry. Remember what I said. Plain speak. Keep it plain. This deck looks like you're going to lose them. I'm worried about you. Part of the challenge of my job is that I have to talk to you about open heart surgery. And after I leave, you have to perform the surgery. Okay? There is no simple. Most companies that do what I do or do what you have to do hire somebody like me to do it. Right? They leave the decision makers who are like you, they're out there making deals and selling and hiring and doing all the other things, right? And they want somebody like me to be in the weeds sticking around, right? Because that's what I do. Now, the interesting thing about me that I think is a little different than everybody, at least I've seen, on these streams as I've been watching them, I've been doing this kind of thing for 45 years. I've done everything you could imagine in marketing and communications, everything. It's not, okay? And the biggest benefit that I bring is that I did this before there was an internet. I understand the context of it, right? There's some things that you're going to be told to do, and you could do them, but if you're not going to do them well, maybe your time could be spent better doing something else that you could focus on doing well. So we're going to talk about a few things. I think my mic's going in and out. We're going to talk about a few things. I would advise you have a notebook handy to take some notes. We're going to try to get through at least a good portion of this, and then we'll open up for questions. And I'm going to start here. It's a story I like. It's an old railroad story about an expert being called in because a brand new diesel locomotive wouldn't start, no matter what the engineer did. The expert arrived, studied the situation, and then he gave the locomotive a light tap with a hammer. It started right up. When the railroad received the expert's bill for $1,000, they asked him to itemize it. I guess they figured he just did this, he wants $1,000. And the reply came back, hitting the locomotive with a hammer, $10. Knowing where to hit it, $990. In those 45 years, I managed the teams that did the first online college application. If any of you or your kids apply to college online, my team is largely responsible for that reality. We did the first online sweepstakes for mobile. We did the first $1 million media buy for SAP. I helped with the launch of The Source magazine. The two guys who were the founders were students up in Harvard. I used to fly up there on the weekend and sleep on their dorm room floor. And the thing was, and this is an interesting thing, this goes to this locomotive thing. I'm standing in Tower Records because they couldn't get distribution. And I'm standing in Tower Records, and at the cash register, the only thing they had at the time was the Tower Records circular. And I'm watching people standing in line looking around, and then they reach over and they grab the circular, and they start reading it. And after I saw the fifth person do that, I put my stuff down and went out and found a payphone, because they still had payphones then. And I called up the guy, Ed Young, who's now with the Hip Hop Hall of Fame Museum, but he was the business guy for The Source, and I said, hey man, you got to call up Tower. I think we can get The Source into Tower Records, right? Because they're just standing there, people want something to read. And he called up Tower, and Ed got the deal done. The Source magazine was the first thing, the first non-music thing in Tower Records. And the performance of The Source is what led Tower and all these bookstores and everything else that you see who now sell toys and all these other things that aren't what they're, is all based on that. Okay? So what I want to start is, first I want to answer some questions that I get, okay, from publishers, from calling. What's inventory? Now, this might have been talked about a little bit, but I just want to make sure. Your inventory is all of the pages that you have on your website, maybe even your social media channels, and you can have more than one website. The NNPA, for example, has multiple websites. So all of those pages and posts, and in addition to that, on a page or a post, you have a certain number of ad locations. We call those zones. The total of all that equals your inventory. That's what you have to work with, okay? And so the goal here is to figure out, goes to the next question, how do we make money on digital? You got three core things that I want you to remember when you leave here today. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Because most of what you're going to be doing is math. It is, they're going to talk about marketing, they're going to talk about, but it's math, okay? How many people you have to reach, how often you have to reach them, what kind of messaging you have to get, how they respond back to certain kinds of messaging. It's all math. So you make money on digital by maximizing that inventory. I saw Dr. Javis when he talked about the Beacon and that $74,000 check. The Beacon actually grossed close to a couple of $100,000. There's another $200,000 in payables that we have to do from the end of the year, and the Beacon was still the #1 earner there. They got another 74 from that, 74, 75, and I hope they don't mind me saying that. And then they had another 20 or 30 from some other campaigns we did. And I had pulled up on my phone. I'm going to just stop here for one sec. As I said, the next highest earner earned $31,000. The next was $26,000. The next was $24,000. Then we had a few 14 or 15s and a few 10,000s. My point is, this fallacy that no publisher is making money is that. But you make money, it's a return on investment. You're not just going to put up a couple of pages on the web and then expect the whole entire world to come there. The amount that you earn, if you don't remember anything else from my presentation today, remember this, at least as far as my part of the interaction, the amount that you earn is your report card grade. We pay every publisher the same amount of money for the impressions they deliver. Nobody makes more because they're bigger or smaller from the standpoint of their opportunity. It's how they manage the opportunity. How much can we make? that number is unlimited. I just was watching CNBC, and they talked about the fact that Microsoft's uh, market value was something like just under 3 trillion, okay? And they got surpassed by Facebook, which is just under 5 trillion. Facebook, I heard someone say earlier today that you don't need to be on Facebook. Facebook has 5 billion users globally. 5 billion. 5 billion. Facebook is bigger than every other social platform put together. Okay? So you're not trying to reach 10, 20 billion people. If you reach a few million people, you're happy. You certainly can do that on Facebook. Do not throw that away. Okay? That goes to the math, right? The math of it is, how many people can I reach reasonably based on my budget and my infrastructure, right? You are not a Fortune 100 company. You have to be sure that your aspirations and your models and everything else fall in line with where you are and what you can do. What is header bidding? Header bidding, there's a few different kinds of the ways the ads are bought. One, principle two are direct sales. I go out there and I sell it. And the other is called programmatic advertising. The big difference between direct sales and programmatic advertising is that me and Dr. Chavis and Ron will sit in a room and make a deal with an advertiser to come and give us a big amount of money, and we're going to run ads across our network as a byproduct of that. Programmatic, we're really not involved in the purchase decision. That's a direct buy at the point of the advertiser, okay? And generally at a lot lower amount, right? That's key. When the CPMs, cost per thousands, that we deliver tend to be between $7 on the low side and $12 on the high side. That compares to an average $3 CPM with programmatic, right? I've got one of my main programmatic guys here. We have a partner for programmatic advertising. We're not discarding it, right? We have a partner, Reset Digital. Jean-Marc is here, and he can get me straightened out if I say anything that's wrong. So header bidding is, there's some code that you put in the header part of your website, and that code enables the advertiser to go in and buy ad space from you in a real-time situation, in milliseconds. They go in, place a bid on that space, and decide whether they're going to buy it. Okay? Now, if you could imagine at somewhere between $1 and $2 or even change pennies, right, you've got to be driving a lot of impressions to make a decent amount of money with programmatic. And it's really, at its core, I remember when it was first introduced, because, you know, as I said, we first did the first $1 million ad buy. Everybody was coming and talking to us at the agency where I was running their interactive group. And when it was first introduced, it was to get remnant content, remnant inventory, the unsold inventory, like an unsold hotel room. Now it's the primary way that advertisers buy. The challenge that we have as the NNPA is that the advertisers know where it's running. So I'm General Motors, why should I pay you $12 to get this space when I can pay, and this is no offense to John Mark, but I could go through John Mark and get the same space for $3, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense as a business decision. We have to be able to go in and make an argument that's stronger than that delta, right? And generally that's because we can layer on other things than just the ad. Is our revenue based upon clicks to the banners? No. I refuse to accept a deal where they want to pay for clicks. I refuse. Because clicks are based on messaging and the offer. There's a whole advertising thing where your campaign response is based on the offer that you're putting out there as well as the message, including the target, right? So if you, as I explained to a publisher who called me, if I'm going to give everybody who calls me a free Tesla, my response rates are going to be through the roof, right? If I say, well, you've got to come and dig in my yard for 2 hours for the chance to maybe win a Tesla, a lot fewer people are going to respond. But all that is decided by the agency, not by us. So we don't agree to be paid for clicks. Our revenue is based on impressions delivered. And now we're offering up a bunch of other things. I sat in for a few minutes on the board meeting where they talked about a $5,000 revenue line on press releases. When Freddie was still here, I tried to introduce the idea that we could get paid for press releases. As soon as he left and I kind of jumped into that spot, we're going to get paid for press releases. We're going to get paid. And that's one of the things I want you to think about. Monetize your other services. So this is the one first thing, right? Sit down. You're going to create what I call a what do we sell list. Okay? And I'm always surprised at how few business people actually do this. I want you to write down every single thing you sell. We sell ads, we sell classifieds, we sell this, and then look at the things you do all day that you could sell to other people. You write articles, you create content, that people pay for that. You could find a way to monetize it. The other part of this list is to then take each one of those items and separately say, okay, who would buy this? Okay, so this is a little Excel spreadsheet you've got. Here's the items down here. Who would buy this? You make that list. And then the third one is, how much would they pay? And then the fourth part of this is, how much can I make on this particular service if I sold it aggressively all year? So we know, Claudia can attest to this, we have some weeks with 10 or 20 people call to get their press releases distributed, right? And the key is, I want to give you guys a little comparison here. What is the name of that? The main distributor of press releases charges, I think it's $150 or $250. PR Newswire, $150 or $250. We charge $350. They call up, they say, well, I could get they say, Norman, I could get it for $250. I'm like, yeah, okay. But we're the black press. It's nothing else that looks like us. If you want to give it the PR Newswire go, that's going out into the ether. We're going to not only take your release and distribute it, we're going to publish it on Black Press USA, right? And then they go to Black Press USA, and guess what they see? They see your content on Black Press USA. That's proof, right, that we have this reach into all these different markets. And then I tell them, yeah, we're in 38 states of the country. We reach over 20 million people in print. We reach millions more every day, probably that same number online. And the one thing that we do that nobody else can do, and then I ask them, are you listening? Are you listening? And they say, yes. We leverage earned trust. Many of our publishers have been operating in the communities they serve for more than 50 years. They live there. They know the people who are there, okay? You can do whatever you want at PR Newswire. You will never be able to get the same trust that our publishers have. They paid at $350. And then the other thing that we do is with every post that we make, and this is something you could certainly do, thank you. We tag everybody we talk about in that post. We tag them on social media. Okay? If you wonder how some of this, remember that period we were doing all these different live streams, we had all these famous people. You wonder how did we get those famous people? Because we were tagging people in these posts. Everybody knew who we were, right? When Stacy called them, it wasn't hard to get them to agree, right? So, next question, how are we paid? That's the biggest question I always get, and the one that's always challenging for me to answer because I don't pay you. I'm not involved in the check cutting, writing thing, right? But I am involved in putting all the numbers together to say these publishers have earned this much. Basically, we go out as a body, we deliver against the number of impressions that we're contracted for. We bill the agency or the advertiser, they pay us, and then we pay publishers, right? We've launched in the fourth quarter, we launched a new program that was modeled on something that we've been doing since we started with Chevrolet DTU. That we call the newsstand. And basically it is the advertiser comes in, we identify a few publishers, we get them to agree to run a combination of editorial and display. That way I get to negotiate a flat fee for those publishers that's going to be more than they would make significantly more, probably on the display, but the advertiser gets to leverage the editorial content, which is the whole point, right? They want their ads to be in their editorial. We just did some stuff, and John Mark can attest to this, with Ford, right? Which we did three Ford campaigns. Before that, we did one with Dexcom, right? It's a hit. We haven't presented this to any advertiser that didn't jump on it, right? So it's a way for us to differentiate ourselves from somebody else who's just selling just straight media. What do you want us to do? 60% of the publishers do not participate in the NNPA digital network. I can't understand it. I can't understand it. It's free money. It's free money. You don't even have to do anything. All you have to do is take 10 or 15 minutes and put some tags on your website. And then you're gonna, Molly was beating me up about her $7 check.
Yeah, I got a check for $7 yesterday.
Well,
I just want to know how I can get some money out
and you're gonna get some more money, right? But my point is,
of it. Tags have been on my side.
yes, they have. Thank you, and you've been awesome, Molly, right? But more than 60% of publishers are not even participating at all. And the problem with that is, Dr. Chavis made the point earlier that the advertisers also see our reporting. I send them a list. Here's all the publishers in our network. They look at who actually is running their ads. And they call me up and they say, you got like 200 publishers on this list, and 30 are running our ads. Why don't we just do something with those 30? Question.
Terry Sanders, Omaha Star, Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you. If the Omaha Star's website on the NNPA website just says the name and there is no live link, then how does anybody know I exist? And having tried to address this, I have been the publisher for 3 years and come here faithfully. But I need to know, how can I get that problem fixed so maybe I can get some other stuff coming to me?
Okay, so we can fix that problem. I believe that's one of the challenges with the Omaha Star, and it's a challenge with a number of publishers, right, is if your domain name changes.
It hasn't changed since I had it.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
If a domain name changes, you have to make sure that we're aware, right? But in terms of the selling and everything else to advertisers, that's mutually exclusive from that list on the NNPA site. We provide them with a separate list. We make sure that on that list, your site is there. Okay, and so that on that list that the advertiser gets, your site is there, and I'm going to answer your question, but there's a point I need to make. They go through every single site on that list, and then they send me back an email saying, we don't want this one, we don't want this one, we don't want this one, take this one off, we don't want this one, and then I have to call them back and get the sites put back on, right? So, but we can get your things straightened out while we're here, okay?
Awesome.
All right,
That's
while we're
all
here.
I need. Because
But-
I don't think that they see me, because I don't see me, but I know I exist.
So we can get yours straightened out while we're here. But we
That's a
have,
word right there. They don't see me, but I know I don't see me, but I know I exist.
but the key point that I want to make is all of the advertisers we market to directly, and we make sure they have all the information. So we make sure they have the list of all the publishers, what the domains are, okay? We're a small publisher with a small visitation rate to our site. Will we make money on this? I think that's the number one question publishers have, right? This is the hardest question to be able to answer, not because it's a hard question to answer, but the answer is hard to hear. I make cars. I want to sell cars. I don't publish newspapers. I make cars and I sell cars. That's what I sell. And I pay money to people who can sell my car, who can help me sell my car. The better you are at helping me sell my car, the more money I'm willing to give you. Okay? If you're a small publisher that doesn't have a lot of visitation on your website, the website is only one piece of your business. You got to get creative. Maybe you got to have some events. You can invite me to have my car at your event. Okay? Maybe you've got to go out and partner with some other publishers and say, hey, look, we're the publishers in this area right here, and we got a lock on this area right here. If you want to talk to people, you might be bigger than me, smaller than me, but together we're a unified front, okay? And because of that, which it's called value and use pricing, you can charge a little more than you would ordinarily, right? You can go and make a deal to be able to do something. And at the same time, you can work to invest to change that around that small visitation rate. And we're going to come back to that in a minute. Can you work with us to get set up the banners on our site? The answer is yes. I'll do that all the time. I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. With Brenda, she participated with us on one of these Ford things. And we talked, and she gave me access. We went in and kind of reconfigured the site, right, to make sure that she could maximize the value. And a little quiet thing is we did the same thing with the New York Beacon before they were the top money earner, okay? I had a conversation with them. I told them, okay, this is what you're doing wrong. You need to do this and this and this and this, right? And God bless them, they follow all the rules, you know? The guy who was running the web stuff was brand new and didn't have a lot of experience with it, which is the case with a lot of publishers. So I'm happy to go in and set the thing up for you and set up the banners, and I say that in every email I send out. If you have any issues, let us know. We're willing to come in and help you out, okay? Is there a minimum threshold for earnings before I am paid? No. Maybe there might be, I think there's not a minimum threshold of earnings before you might be paid, but we're not necessarily sending out a bunch of $1 checks every week, right? I think we try to get the publisher's earnings up to $100 before a check is cut. However, if something else is happening, and that's the industry standard, by the way, but if something else is going on, you're part of a print buy or something like that, the amount will be bundled into that check, okay? And we're working on doing some things around that. How much should we charge for access to our inventory? It's an interesting question. That's the reading part. Remember I said reading, writing, and arithmetic? So I've heard publishers say that they wanted to charge a $60 CPM. And I see John Marcus laughing, because all I can do is laugh, because if the industry standard is $3 to $4, who's going to pay? You could charge him $60. You could say I want $60, right? But nobody's going to pay it. So if the largest corporations in the world, they're all digital, even the car companies are digital now. Your car is a computer on wheels, okay? Then it's a question of how you can maximize that inventory. You may not be able to make more purely for that inventory, but that inventory in combination with something else, right? It can generate some dollars. Here's the thing tip you can use when you're selling. For every channel means print, web, event marketing, okay, everything that you use in combination with another, you increase response rates by 99%, by 95%, okay? So if I run a print ad and a web ad and I come to you and I come in and do a sponsorship with you, my response rates as the advertiser are going to be 3 times what they would have been if I just ran a banner. Okay? You have to go in and sell that. And I want you to remember this too. You don't, just like that thing, you don't do business with a bank, you do business with a banker. Nobody's going to give you any business if they don't know who you are. You got to knock on their door and introduce yourself, right? You got to get to know that person, and then you have to support that person, right? Because they're making a decision that's putting them at risk. There's a people side. You know, I will say this, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn a little bit. I heard a lot of negative points being made about advertisers and those other things, those people have families. They have a job. They got to pay their bills. They're just like everybody else. And they are not trying to make a decision that's going to put them at risk. And if you don't understand that, you're never going to be able to succeed because you're not going to be able to do business in a way that's compassionate and empathetic, right? And people would rather do business with people they like than people who are talented or smart or that other. If they like you, they will have you coming back over and over. They will come up with stuff for you, right? But if you want to sit around looking at your computer wondering why you're not making any money, that's why. If you don't get up and do something, right? Get up and see somebody and talk to people. You've been in that same situation. Will this conflict with direct sales that have made with our own clients and customers? Most of the time, no. Most of the time, you're focusing on local markets, right? And we're doing national sales. So there's generally no conflict, right? And if there is a conflict, for instance, rolling out has a direct contract with GM. We explained to the agency for GM that rolling out carves out inventory for us in addition to whatever they're selling, right? So that GM understands because they're buying a lot more inventory than the two of us combined. So they just make allowances for that. Finally, will sales of digital cannibalize my print sales? The first presentation I gave, it was at that thing in the Bahamas. My first slide was my grandson, 3 years old, and he had an iPad in his hand. Now remember, this is the first time I'm meeting any of these publishers. And I said, see that? That's my grandson, Donovan. The whole audience was like, ooh, because he's a cutie pie. He was then anyway. And I said, you see what he's got in his hand? The room got silent. He's got an iPad. Donovan will never know a world where he's reading a newspaper. Okay? That's the tough thing that I have to say. I'm not here. I was talking to my sister yesterday about being here, and one of my niece, her daughter, had come to the last thing we had here in Fort Lauderdale, and I was talking about the legacy and the history because she came with us when we got invited to the Smithsonian African American Museum. My sister came with us. I said, and just seeing our publishers were there. Our publishers' front page was in that display. Like you are in the midst of history and greatness. But I'm not here for that history. I'm here for the history 50 years from now. When they talk about the NNPA, right? And they say, wow, how did the NNPA make the transition, right? They're going to make a bunch of people will be named on it, but somewhere on that list, somewhere maybe at the bottom, my name has to pop up, right? I'm here for the history we're going to be making. And it will not cannibalize your print sales. The two things are mutually exclusive for most advertisers. You have to bundle them. We explain to people that 150 million people are still reading newspapers. That among African Americans, they skew disproportionately to reading newspapers and going back to newspapers and other forms of print media to reconfirm the purchase decision, okay? So if you don't include print and newspapers and other kinds of long-form media where people can go and actually get information about the purchase before they make it, you're doing a disservice to your customer, right? So, and in addition to that, African Americans look to advertisers who advertise with African Americans, okay? And give them a disproportionate amount of credit for that advertisement. In other words, you run the same ad in Time Magazine that you run in the New Journal and Guide. As a black person, I said, wow, they're advertising in the New Journal and Guide. I'm going to go and talk to that car company. Okay? So we sat, then I got to get to the rest of this real quick, because there's a point in here that's really important. We were at a meeting with Comcast. I'm going to say the name Comcast. An interesting thing was happening. There's me, Dr. Chavis, and Ron sitting there. There's a young black woman there and a young white man there. The young white man was asking us questions, and he was certainly respectful of Dr. Chavis and all that he's achieved. The young black girl was like, she said, I remember the one question, she says, Why should we advertise with you? Why don't we just run on Apple News? We could reach the same black people on Apple News. Now, ordinarily, when I'm there in a meeting with Dr. Chavis, I defer to Dr. Chavis. But at that time, I just felt like I had to speak. I'm like, look, nobody's stopping you from advertising with Apple News, but Apple News is not the NNPA. We are not the nation's leading only trade association of black-owned newspapers and media companies. We are not. Apple News will never be what the NNPA is. And if you want to advertise on Apple News, God bless you, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, right? My point being, you never know who's going to be on the other side of the table. I remember I met with Chuck D early on when we were doing a whole bunch of stuff with rap. And he had told me that a lot of black people think that black people were the key to the success of Public Enemy. He said that's not true. He said our message is black. But when we're performing in Germany, there's no black people out there in the stadium. He's like selling at stadiums in Europe. 65% of the viewers to blackpressusa.com are white. 65%. Okay? So when I talk to agencies, I say, yeah, you know how these white advertisers are telling you they can reach the same black audience? We can reach the same white audience. And then they look at me and I say, well, look, think about it this way. We are their mayors. We are their sheriffs. We teach in their schools, and there's no other community newspapers anymore. We're the last bastion. So if you want to know who just got elected to the school board or the city council, guess what you're going to do? You're going to find one of our papers, right? So you have to give them something that they can bring to the other decision makers. So this is the key part that we got to get to, which is ad fraud. Ad fraud. A couple of dozen of you have been. We have on February 1st. We're launching the next GM campaign. It's $300,000 or $400,000. Now we usually do multiple campaigns with GM during the course of the year. They sent me a list. It's about 24 of you. They do not want to have included because your sites right now are guilty of the potential for ad fraud. It's practice of fraudulently representing online advertisement impressions, clicks, conversion, or data events in order to generate revenue. Fraud in digital advertising is a subset of invalid traffic. Invalid traffic, IVT, it's an acronym for invalid traffic. It refers to any form of web traffic that's derived from a non-human source. The industry standard is 2 to 3%. I'm going to kind of go through this a little quickly. It's kind of technical, but you'll be able to refresh yourselves and go back and look at the thing here. The industry standard is 2 to 3%. Many of our publishers are averaging 30 to 40%. 30 to 40%. And that creates a disproportionate percentage for us. So what the agency for GM has basically told us is, instead of us killing the campaign for you as a network, you got to take the most abusive publishers off the buy. Why does it matter for mitigating fraud? GIVT, general invalid traffic, refers to bots, crawlers, spiders, or any kind of non-human traffic routed from a data center or IP address. Also apply activity-based filtration or browsers that pre-render pages. SVIT, sophisticated invalid traffic, those are techniques that are more heinous. So none of our publishers are at a level they're practicing that, right? But the problem is Google and other search engines that crawl your site contribute to IVT. So there's a certain percentage that is baked in. If you have a website, there's a certain amount of that that's going to be there just because you have a site. You have to have enough visitation to go above the number where that percentage becomes a problem. Now the industry standard is 2 to 3%. GM's policy is 3%. I got them to give us 8%. But certainly they're not going to give us 30%. Okay? So, and I will be reaching out to the publishers that we need to address it. Acceptable levels, usually 1 to 3% depending on the source and fraud solution, to help and show confidence in their platform. This is usually far less than the actual rate of fraud in the campaign since it misses traffic from more sophisticated bots. Types of IVT. That second one, bot spiders and other crawlers, activity-based filtration, non-browser user agent headers or unknown browsers. You're on your website, you have these plugins. Most of us are using WordPress. Those plugins talk to their developers. You ever go, if you ever in the back end, it says update, time for an update. If you set it to auto update, it's talking periodically to the developers. Well, that's invalid traffic, okay? We have a challenge for Black Press USA. About 65 of the publishers are pulling down content from Black Press USA to publish on their sites through what we call RSS feed. That feed is invalid traffic. So it hurts the NNPA's revenue ability, but if we turn that off, we're doing a disservice to our publishers, right? So if you have an RSS feed in place and you've got a lot of traffic that way, then there's an issue. Prefetch or browser pre-rendered traffic, there's a way you can do your site so that all the pages preload before they're even shown. Pages preloading that nobody ever gets to. It preloads with the ads and everything else, invalid traffic. You put your ad at the bottom of the page, and what advertisers, this is not on a list, but it's important because you put your ad, the advertisers want the ad to be in the viewable window. And the tags that we provide you tell them and us whether it was viewable. We got many publishers who put the ads way down at the bottom of the page, way down at the bottom. Nobody's ever going to see that. You think so we don't get paid for those impressions. Okay? Now, up until now, remember I said I do the math? Part of that math is that we've diverted a percentage of the NNPA revenue to compensate publishers for those banners. We can't keep doing that. That's non-sustainable. You got to put the banner in a place where it will be reasonably in the window. They may scroll a little bit, right? But it's got to be reasonably in the window. You also can't, it's called stacking. You can't put 5 ads, one underneath the other, thinking that's a way to grow revenue. And the other thing you can't do is, you can't take the tags we sent you. We had a publisher. He took the tags we gave. I'm like, there's no way this publisher made this much money. There's no way this publisher made this much money. I called him up. He's like, oh, well, I shared the tags with these other sites. I was like, you can't share our tags with other sites. You can't do that. Okay, we can't do that. So if you have more than one site that you want the tags to run on, let us know. We'll get you tags for the other sites. But you can't stack them in. So you can't stack the ads. You can't hijack devices and user sessions, invalid proxy traffic, adware and malware. If you have an ad thing on your site, this is another issue we have, and you have it rotating the banners. It's rotating the banners, right? After that first view, the rest is, you're not going to get paid for. Okay, you can't just keep, somebody is sitting there on the page and they've seen that ad 50 times because you keep going, it's rotating. No, the tax will let us know that. So you want to address that. Incentivized manipulation of measurements, obviously, if you're doing false reporting, that won't work. Falsely represented sites and ads, so why we have to give them a list. Cookie stuffing is really complex. We won't talk about that because you guys aren't doing that. Manipulation or falsification of location data. We not only measure where they come, if it was viewable, if it was non-viewable, we also know where they were when they saw it and where the ad was displayed. So as it happens, millions of our ad impressions are delivered internationally. Let me give you all some other context too. In October and November, Black Press USA delivered 70 million ad impressions over those 2 months. 70 million, okay? We were only compensated for 10 million of them, right? So we were over delivering, but I wanted to see what is possible, right? Because that gives us a sense of what the inventory is that we can fill. But for advertisers, they don't want to pay and they won't pay for ads that we deliver outside of the US. So even though we have it structured to only deliver via US, it happens that some of those people will pull down our content and do other kinds of things, also pull the tags in. And they may be showing it in other places, right? So we explain that to the advertisers because, or else we get hit with a high IVT, right? And now they understand the context. So, I'm sorry? Which one? Activity-based filtration is, there's a way that technically, right, you can manipulate what other people are doing, right? You can make it seem like more people are visiting your site than actually are, okay? By, on their machines, there's a way that you can create, it's called a proxy. It makes it look like they're there and they're doing this other stuff. 2 or 3 people are on the same machine, that kind of thing, right? So the reason I didn't go into it is because we don't, it's not, that takes a level of sophistication that most publishers aren't using. So authorized digital, I didn't mean that to be, it's just a matter of fact. This is the key right here. Authorized digital sellers, or ads.txt. It's an IAB, stands for International Advertising Bureau Tech Lab Initiative. There's a file that we need you to post in your server, right? In the root part of your server. It's called the ads.txt file. We make it available right on the newswire. There's a link right there where you could download the thing, as well as all of your tags. I get called from by publishers, but the tags are right there. You can go there and download the things, right? But that ads.txt file, installing the ads.txt file gives you more control over who's allowed to sell your ads on your site and helps prevent counterfeit inventory from being presented to advertisers. Basically, it has a bunch of things where each advertiser, each seller is identified by a string of code. So when the agency's ads go there, part of what that script does is it goes to look and says, is there an ads.txt file present? If there isn't, it's labeled as IVT, even though it may be legitimate inventory. How are you doing with time? Okay, so I need you all, like I said, there's about 24, and I'll reach out to those 24, but we've got to get that ads.txt file in place because that's just hurting everybody, right? And the reason it hurts everybody is because I sell the network. And if the network doesn't meet a certain standard, it looks badly, if it reflects badly on us as a network. Understanding the purchase decision maker, this I put in as a requirement because I kind of alluded to this earlier, but if you don't understand who you're selling to, it's not going to work. 15 more, because we have to clear out so they can set up. Okay, you know what? Then why don't we go to questions, because you all can get this deck. Yes.
Ben, can you pass that mic back to Karen?
Okay, so I think I heard your question was.
Green light is on. Okay. When should we expect to hear from you, or how will we know if we're one of the newspapers that are on the no-fly list? That's what I'm gonna call it.
On Monday, I'm going to reach out to all the newspapers. I'm going to reach out to all the newspapers that are on the no-fly list, but I will also be sending out an email. Periodically, I send out opportunity emails.
So if I've never gotten an opportunity email, that says that you don't know how to find me.
Well, it could say a number of different things. It's possible
But that's
that,
what it says for me.
right, it's possible that it went into your junk folder or that, it was overlooked. But
I'll give you my card.
terrific, excellent. And then we'll make sure that you receive it. But
So Mr. Bogle, don't leave out. I was just getting ready to ask you to stand up. When we had that meeting 8 years ago at Comcast, the meeting that Norman referred to, where the Caucasian representative Comcast was ready to do ad buys with the NNPA network, but it was the African-American sister who said she couldn't see why we were any different to Apple News. thank God there were some higher ups in Comcast based on their personal relationship with Mr. Bogle. He's in Philadelphia. Comcast is headquartered in Philadelphia. So all the publishers in here that get Comcast ads, print ads, you really should thank Mr. Bob Bogle. Because his relationship. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because Trini, you were at Memphis. You got a relationship with FedEx. The Detroit publisher, the Michigan publishers, the Florida publisher, every state, you got a major corporation in your state. We should have relationship, I'm talking with the executives of the corporation, not with the diversity people, because they have a title but no power. We need the proper relationship with CEOs, chief marketing officers of these major companies. And because we are now doing print, we have a lever now to begin doing digital. But it has taken a while, you know. And Norman, I appreciate the attentiveness of the publishers, because to me, I think we should take where we are and try to improve upon it. I think all the publishers here are more than willing to do what is necessary to help generate additional revenue streams. And I think the fact that we're working with Reset Digital now going to really help us out on the programmatic side, which we have not been making a lot of money in programmatic, but now with the help of Reset Digital, we should. But that is not to forsake print. Yes, the trend is moving from print to digital, but it has not moved totally yet. And as long as people are still buying print ads, we have to make sure that we sell. That's why we need salespeople that know how to sell both print and digital without either or one trading off the other, one supplanting the other. That's why we're going to have the sales conference. Oh, y'all don't know about it, I told the board. But this year, we're going to have a sales conference for salespeople. And working with Norman, working with Reset Digital to make sure that, because to me, as large as we are, network, the NNPA network is bigger than the Associated Press network. But we don't function like it. AP has 50 bureaus, a bureau in each state. We have 250 bureaus. But we don't function like a network. And a network is a net that works.
Okay. Was there another hand somewhere?
Paris Brown with the Baltimore Times, and my question, I've spoken to some publishers. My question to you is, do you need GAM in order to run these ads? And I know personally from conversations that some publishers are having problems with that. So if that's a prerequisite, we may have to work on that.
The correct answer, because Google is providing a high level of support, is that Google Ad Manager, that's GAM, provides a lot of resources that will benefit publishers in terms of analytics, in terms of simplification, but it is a tech-intensive tool, okay? There are alternatives to Google Ad Manager that a publisher, this is how we'll answer this. There are alternatives to Google Ad Manager that a publisher can implement as they work towards the implementation of Google Ad Manager. I think that's a good way to answer it. I will also say we don't use Google Ad Manager on Black Press USA for a couple of different reasons. Among them, when we first started with all this, we were having challenges getting some of the approvals that are necessary, right? But we do have a Google Ad Manager account, and I have helped other publishers implement their Google Ad Manager implementation. So if you're struggling with it, I can help you out, and I can walk you through kind of what the day-to-day management requirements would be.
Have GAM, you don't have to worry about those problems with fraud. That's what I was told.
If you have GAM, okay, the reason that Google will tell you, if Google explained that, is because Google AdSense, which is part of what they implemented when they implements an ads.txt file as part of it, right? So it's bundled. You don't even know that's there. Whereas if you're using something else, you have to do that manually. But what we've discovered is that the ads.txt file the Google Ad Manager implements is not easily located to be manipulated. And you have to add other entries to it, right? So it's still technical. But yes, if you have GAM, you should be in a good spot.
Since I had GAM, I was okay.
Yeah, you should be in a good spot because, as I said, it creates an ads.txt file.
Because of the maybe perhaps the underutilization of the tags, that they may not have that in place to be able to take advantage of that. We have GAM, so that is easy for us to just drop the tags in, because I don't know how to
No,
do it. So in terms of the infrastructure within our newspapers, not it helps to have that.
Yes, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or shine any undue light on you, but the multiple times doesn't have the ads.txt file in place. So you're one of the couple of dozen, right? So as I said, GAM is not a prerequisite for having that. You still have to make sure. But if you're using AdSense, AdSense will implement the ads.txt. But I will definitely reach out to the publishers. The biggest thing is they go through the list. They tell us who doesn't have the ads.txt. That's mutually exclusive from whether they're running the tags or not. Okay? So we've got to kind of get them to do both. Put the ads.txt file in place and run the tags. Is there any other questions?
You mentioned earlier on something about you were working with an advertiser and you had selected a few publishers to run a campaign through. What was that selection process? And if I understand the ones the 25 or so that you're going to reach out to, but for all the other 200 and some of the publishers, does all the rest of them get in, or is there a certain threshold that you have to meet, like print used to have you do?
In the instance of the publishers that we were able to negotiate the other deals with, they were publishers in specific markets. So essentially, the advertiser came to us and said, we're interested in being these 4 markets. And I said, no, what you really want to do is reach out nationally. They said, well, we only want to be in these 4 markets. So I said, I'll tell you what we do. If you're willing to do the national campaign, we could layer on these 4 markets and put a heightened attention to them, right? Because they're the markets you want to be in. But I said, but I want to tell you something about black people. They don't all live in the same city. And when the black person decides they want to buy your product, guess what they do? They call their mother in South Carolina. They say, Mom, I'm thinking about buying this car. What do you think? They live in Texas, right? So if Mom never saw your ad, she's not going to say, oh, I know who they are. So just because you're in this market doesn't mean that's where the people are. And if you're talking about digital, you want to meet the people where they are, right? Next, another question. Let me.
We were talking about compliance. Can you look at my website and tell me if I'm compliant, or is there something more I need to do? I'm really interested. Say that again. I want you to tell me how we can be compliant, how all of us, because some of us are not, you mentioned, and I want to know.
Yeah, I'm gonna. We've been wrestling with going and looking at each site and giving a score, right? There's a lot of sites. That's a lot. That's a multiple person job. But I can give you some points, right? Your news site, you have to publish news, and you have to publish it regularly. If they go to your site and they see the last time you published something was 3 months ago, they call me up and they say, take them off the buy. If they go to your site and all they see is a front page, there's just one page, right? They call me up and they say, this is not a website. This is a landing page. Take them off the buy, right? Now, I'm arguing, what difference does it make if they stay on the buy, because they're not costing you anything until they cost you something. They said, we don't want our brand displayed in that environment, okay? If you are not publishing, if the majority of the content on your site is not original, they call me up and say, take them off the buy. That's a big deal. You cannot, let me make these 2 points. They're not advertising related. Maybe it's 3. 1, you can't grab pictures that you don't have the rights to. You can't. And because it doesn't make any, Dr. Chavis is talking about us helping you become better. The only reason you're getting away with it is because nobody knows you're there. And once we make the site popular, you are going to be hit at $500 to $600 per image for those unlicensed images. Okay?
Okay, Bobby Henry. Suppose, for instance, we have an agency, ArtServe. They sent us a press release with a photo on it. We published it on our website. That copycat people, sent me an email
Right.
saying that they were going to charge me that
Right.
amount of money.
Right.
And so I replied back, no, we didn't put that picture up there. You need to contact such and such and such. But there's a clause in there that says because we put it up, we could actually be held liable. But I'm disputing that. So I don't, I didn't put it up. We didn't put it up there.
You can dispute it, and it really depends on how much they want to go after it. But most of the companies that do, like what the company you, are very sophisticated about it, and they're going to keep going, right? They're not going to let it go. You're gonna end up having to pay them something. Okay, you might be able to negotiate a lower amount, but my point here is, if you've been doing this for years, you need to get on it, because it's going to come and get you, right? That one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of with the NNPA is, over this last time, I think only twice, Claudia, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's twice we had to pay, and that was for images that happened before my time, right? If they send me an image and they can't say they have the rights, we get another image. We do not use images from third parties. The third part is Google scores you differently. I heard a conversation about Google Analytics and the search engines. You are graded differently for original content than you are for content from other sources. Okay? I want you all to use the Newswire. There's excellent content on the Newswire, okay? But the Newswire should not be 100% of your content, right? It was never designed to be 100% of the content that a publisher publishes, right? It's a supplement. And you need the more original content you can generate, the better it will be on your Google search engine results.
All right, let's thank Norman, everybody. Okay, so here are instructions. We should leave the room safely yet swiftly. All right, because they need to come and set up for tonight, because we'll be back in this room. They're going to knock this wall out, and then we'll be back in here, knock the whole thing out, and then we'll be back in here, okay? So if you don't mind, don't forget your belongings. See you this evening. What time are we gathering? What time is reception?
Yes, sir.
We'll gather here at 6:30.